who got beat pretty badly in the first 2 games, but they get their best player back, their most experienced player back in Blake Griffin.
Slide move from Blake Griffin.
He handles like a point guard. He facilitates like a point guard in their offense.
T.J. Wilson trying to hang with Griffin. Griffin finishes in the back. Griffin connects.
Welcome back, Blake Griffin.
And that is going to be number 4 on Giannis.
I'll be honest with you. I like what Giannis did right there. Knowing this guy sets hard screens, I'm going to try to run through him. I want to make him feel my presence. Now, you don't like seeing him go to the bench right here, but sometimes you have to take a stand with a guy that you know will do the same to you.
Yeah. Bledsoe rocks the ring.
Blake continuing to stay aggressive.
Bledsoe has the last 6 Bucks points. Middleton ends that. Middleton, he has 13. Biggest lead of the game for Milwaukee. Adetokounmpo into the paint and the soft touch. Giannis, 14 tonight. Milwaukee on a mission. End of the second quarter. The Bucks took control and never looked back. They take a commanding 3-0 series lead.
Well, the Bucks have been the best team in the league. You're going to need your best player to have any chance against them, no matter who you are. And Blake Griffin gave everything that he had to play and play well in Game 3. Our own Jamie Maggio will be there, part of the TNT broadcast tonight in Detroit. And there had to be, obviously, a lot of energy and inspiration, Jamie, from just him playing it all. My question is, physically after the game, what was Blake saying about how he felt now heading into this one in Game 4?
Well, Blake said that he felt good after the game. I'm not sure he would tell us otherwise, though, Casey, to be quite honest with you. But Blake, doing what he needs to do. And I tell you what, he really had a hard time sitting out of games 1 and 2, feeling like he wanted to be out there on the floor with his teammates. And, of course, he was able to produce in a big way in Game 3, putting up 27 points, a huge part, the biggest part of their offense. I expect Blake to come out and give it his all again in this one tonight. And Coach Casey telling me before the game he would rather have Blake Griffin at 80% than Blake Griffin at 0. And now, I think all the Pistons would agree with that.
I was going to say, they want some version of him. On the other side, I know Milwaukee would like to close this out. Last year, they played the Celtics, took it to 7. There's a rematch possibly brewing. The Celtics were very honest, Jamie, in their pressers about looking forward to that. How much has Bud kind of kept them on what's going on tonight? Has there been any conversation about what's next?
You know, we asked Coach Bud about that before the game, and he said right now that is all focusing on Game 4 tonight against the Pistons. He said if we win tonight, we haven't even talked about what the practice schedule would be like moving between this game and the start of the next round. So he's really focusing on the task at hand, and he's been able to have his players do that. And I think you've seen that throughout the regular season and even throughout this playoff series, despite the big wins, the big margin of wins, an average of 24 points in these first 3 games. These guys have been playing hard and focused from start to finish, a full 48 minutes.
The last thing is, how much confidence did you glean was coming from this group and how they won? Because we know Giannis can take over. He's most likely going to win the MVP. But that supporting cast was probably the biggest reason why they excelled the way they did in Game 3.
Absolutely, Casey. I mean, Giannis, in Giannis terms, had sort of a moderate game in Game 3. He only put up 14 points. But you have Brook Lopez, Chris Middleton, Eric Bledsoe, and Ersan Ilyasova all scoring more than Giannis in that Game 3. So they're able to get that offensive production from all over their lineup. But in terms of the confidence, I'd say it's a quiet confidence. This team has not been boastful or arrogant and overconfident. They've given a proper amount of respect to the Pistons throughout this series. And I feel like that's how they will approach this one here tonight.
Moments from now, it will be anything but quiet where you're standing. They're going to need every bit of that crowd. Enjoy it. Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate it. There's Jamie Maggio, who's joining us, should be part of the broadcast. And, Coach, I don't want to bring up bad memories, but you were in a situation against the Milwaukee team when you were in Chicago. That closeout, always the hardest one to get, ends up going 6. How much different was it for your group because you didn't close it out? What is Bud trying to explain to the guys about the necessity of tonight?
I think Bud understands how important it is because you have Boston that's sitting there waiting, resting, recovering, and preparing. So you don't want to extend your series because that's going to take away from your rest and your recovery and your preparing. So the longer it goes against them. But it's hard. We had a situation against Milwaukee where we lost the game Game 4. And then they came back and they won Game 5 in Chicago, and then we ended up winning the series, but it extended it, a few more days, and that hurt us in our preparation for the next series against Cleveland.
All right, there's pressure of winning and all of that. Then there are just some things you can't unsee. Like, for example, the defensive film that Rex broke down before. But I digress. Charles and a Speedo. Now, I'll tell you that I think it was Haynes sent a big box of underwear during the baseball playoffs here, and Pedro Martinez and others were wearing it around the office. It wasn't a pretty sight, but not as bad as perhaps this visual. If you missed this, listen.
If it's the Pistons, this is the matchup. See, we had both of them covered.
Yeah. Listen, if the Pistons come back, I'll do the whole show in a Speedo.
Pistons come back. I might not even do it in a Speedo. I might do it, but naked.
No. We'd rather you with the Speedo.
Being fair, not sure block or charge, maybe both. Scarier that Shaq was rooting for it than anything else. And I know Charles doesn't watch NBA TV, as he exclaimed. So he knows we won't be discussing this. But I don't know that there's necessarily any pressure that you've even felt, Coach, on like what that visual will be for all of us. Should we worry? Or
I think it should be pay-per-view. I think a lot of people would want to see that. It'd be worth a good laugh.
I don't want to see the Chuck Speedo.
Me neither.
Go Bucks. Speedo.
Me neither. Go Bucks.
Go Bucks.
We're impartial. We're totally impartial. As far as for the Nuggets fans, they're partial to really not seeing Pop and his team anymore, like everyone else over the last couple of decades. Can Murray and the Joker find a way to win 2 more? It's not how you start, it is how you finish. I'm not saying that there might be some people in the 90s like me that wish that this was the fourth quarter of John Starks, perhaps, in Game 6 against Houston, but I'm not, 0 for 14, and then this happened. Affected the game, though, in so many other ways, which we will get into and discuss. Here, heading into Game 4, the thoughts not only from the Beard, but on the other side, the Jazz, and how to stop.
I still took 20 shots. They only made 3 of them. I said mentality doesn't never changes. Those guys, they're missing a couple shots, they probably. Field goal, they only was up by 2, they were in trouble. Honestly, so I told the guys, we just need 1 quarter. Defensively, offensively, we were going to get going, we're going to make enough shots. And that's what I got.
But is it a level of pride, being attached to not being swept too? I mean, just y'all are basketball players out here in a good mood. Is there a level of pride to, hey, we don't want to get swept either?
It is pride every night. You don't want to win. You don't want to lose. Every night you want to come out ready and try to get a win. And like I said, the goal is to win a championship. But if it's a very good team, but if you want to be the best team, you got to beat the best teams. Every time it's a different challenge for us, and it's an opportunity for us to get better and to learn from it.
It was an effective and a playoff-activated defensive player in Gobert early in that game. They thought they had done everything they could, Coach, to try and contain, because you can't stop James Harden. We were just sitting there listening to him being like, that's why he's great. It was like a hitter who you could fail 20 times, he's going to go get hits the next 10. But what ways did you see him impacting the game as you watch Game 3 develop for James?
That's what I loved about his game. He didn't allow a poor shooting night to affect the way he played. He played a great game without shooting well. And when you see that he had 6 steals in this game, he got to the line 16 times. He did a lot of other things. And when you're watching right here, if you watch, he baits Korver into this pass. So he's leaning one way, but it's a setup. He's sitting on that pass all the way, and it's easy offense. Then the same thing here offensively. So they're getting on his side. He's downhill right here. He puts Gobert in a pickle. It's 2-on-1, and this is what they call vertical spacing, and that's a very high percentage shot He's getting same thing on this one. He's going down. He's putting Rubio in low man position. This is what we call a slot cut. Another easy layup in the restricted area. They're looking for the switch on this to get Rubio onto Harden. They get it. And now their spacing is great. And this is what I love. This is the game on the line late in the fourth quarter. And he's got the poise and confidence. Even though he's shooting a low percentage, he steps up and he makes a big, big shot. Same thing in this situation. Late in the game, he's still on the attack. He's getting in there. He's getting to the free throw line. 16 free throws. That's a lot. So he has 22 points in a game in which he shot 3 for 20. It says a lot about why he's an MVP candidate.
You know, you sit there, and first of all, you mentioned Korver. I want to say this because there'll be a lot of talk about Donovan Mitchell. For those who didn't see, go seek out on Twitter how he unprovoked when I know you guys saw it from your nodding. His presser was over, and Korver said he had something to say and went out and talked about what Donovan Mitchell was like as a person, never played with a young player. I mean, that's true leadership. The problem is, though, Rex, is that no matter what you do, there's no way to stop it. And now to take you more towards something that not that you weren't good at defense. Now that you weren't good at defense.
Oh, come on, man.
You studied a lot of film on shooting and did plenty of... If you don't shoot with the Rockets, you can't beat the Rockets, right?
You're going to have to make shots. Of course, they've got a guy who's, MVP last year. He's a high usage guy. But you are absolutely right. You're going to have to get out. You're going to have to make some of your open shots. James Harden had a brutal game the other night. The thing that when I go back to this, Kyle Korver talking about Donovan Mitchell the other night. Donovan's going to have to go through this. He's going to have to go through some of these. We saw all the young, great guys come into the league. This is his second year in the NBA. He's a fantastic young player. I got to know him a little bit. He was down the road at Louisville for a couple of years. Terrific young man, a special young man. And to see him, had a chance to win the game the other night, missed the shot. He's going to learn from this. He's hungry. He's humble. I'm a big Donovan Mitchell fan, even though he went to Louisville.
Now, we're not saying that if things don't go right, this might be something he wants to know about, but let's talk about 1800 Tequila, because they are helping us out. With, continue to refine, just refined enough, and then not refined enough. The shots. This is something that when you look at the numbers, and Ingles stands out really in a big, big way. And Coach can speak to this, but say, when you look at this team, if we look at these numbers, I was asked what kind of shots. And a lot of times the shot percentage doesn't change because mechanics, right? Change because they're better shots. Are the Jazz getting enough shots? Are they missing open shots? How is a team that shoots well from three doing this poorly in this series?
Well, one of the problems is last year when they played Houston in the conference semifinals, Joe Ingles was the one facilitating shots for himself and everybody else. You take that ball out of his hands against a team like Houston, he's less effective. And I think one of the biggest issues, I understand why Utah is playing defense the way they are and trying to figure out a way to mitigate James Harden's effectiveness. But to me, that's the wrong-headed way to play the Houston Rockets. If anything, you let Harden get his 50. You let him go banana. You let him take as many shots as he wants. What you don't do is let Clint Capella beat you to death. You don't let Daniel House beat you to death. You don't let some of these other guys beat you the way they have been because you're so focused on trying to take James Harden out of his sweet spot. I see what you're doing. You're trying to put Rudy Gobert in a position to affect James Harden's night. You're never going to affect a great player's night enough to win games in this league. It's always going to be about, do his role players and the guys supporting him get the ball enough to make an impact to win games and to make shots and affect all of the other things that go on that he can't. You can go back in the history of the game, think of the greatest players ever. Some of Michael Jordan's greatest plays in this league were passes to someone else. It doesn't change. That's always going to be a part of it. And if you don't fall down that rabbit hole, you have an opportunity. But when you do, I think the Jazz are so deep into the scouting report right now, they can't just go out there and play and react and compete the way they need to.
Well, it's the potato sack race with Rubio behind Harden. I mean, it's odd. We were talking about this yesterday off the air about this game. And Coach, as somebody who understands defense as much as anybody, and look, Quinn's done such a fantastic job, but you don't like hearing Rubio and others say, we weren't really buying in. Changing a defense for a player, for a matchup that you don't normally run, how dangerous is that to try and get guys to do effectively in a series?
Well, that's what a special player is going to do. When you're defending a special player, you have to have special rules. Like they have probably the defensive player of the year sitting back there. and Gobert, and they've been a terrific team. And any time you commit to any one particular thing, there are certain things you're going to give up. And so I think when you look at it after a game is over, during the course of the game, there's two things you ask yourself. One is, are you doing it hard enough, and are you executing the scheme correctly? And if you are, and they're scoring effectively, then you change. But they may be seeing something that we're not. And the thing is they've been a terrific team for a long time. And I do think they've gotten some good looks at threes, and they're not making right now. But they're a terrific team offensively in the way they share the ball.
All right, having small kids, I know about rocking babies. It sometimes goes better than it did for Russ in the last couple of games since he did so. Dame, we know he's a win away from the next round, but what about that ladder, Sekou?
A good Thunder team. Dame's so good at controlling the action and not just scoring, but controlling the entire flow of the action for his team on both ends, that he gives Portland an opportunity, to me, to finally make a breakthrough this year in the playoffs.
Yeah, I also, Coach, how about controlling the emotion? Because we could talk about the whole Dudley thing forever, but Russ knows what he's doing. I mean, he can agitate and get under you, and you even hear the words in the press conference after the game they lost, and it seemed like Dame was less agitated than he was about the whole thing. How much does that even keel through an injury, through a series like this, and that matchup help a Dame Lillard?
Well, I think they're both winners. I think there's different personalities for different players. And in Dame's case, he's more stoic, even-keeled. And I like what he did from last year. He took the failure of last year, and they turned that into a positive this year. And they've been great. They changed a lot the way they play on the road. They have confidence that they can win on the road now. And with Russ is different. Emotion has been a big part of his game. You never want to take that away from him. So that's who he is. And he's done a lot of great things for OKC. They've won a lot of games. So this is a great matchup. We all love watching those two compete against each other. Is great for the game, and it's great for their teams.
Well, you and I are both stoic. I know that for sure. Rex, in case you didn't know, he's Kevin Durant. We didn't have to drop any lower thirds, but he has certainly made his presence felt, been demonstrative. What have you seen from him as this series has gone on?
Well, I know we all tend to get on KD in the social media age. Get on him for being sensitive with the media after games. Get on him for changing teams, all that. He is KD. And he showed us the other night, Steve Kerr had to remind him what he needs to do. Be aggressive, go out there and do it. But let's not forget, he's the biggest matchup problem in the entire NBA. You could argue Giannis, maybe a couple others, but Kevin Durant is a 7'2" guard. And he poses problems for teams nightly. There's a reason he's been the MVP of the finals twice now.
Yeah, I also think we should give some love to Kyrie, because a lot of reasons. Obviously, we know what a great player he is. You could tell, which he didn't talk about too, that he was probably under the weather a little bit. I mean, clearly it looked like he was here with our pollen in Atlanta during some of these press conferences. But we wondered, would he scale back? How much he was helping facilitate the big night from Hayward. We saw it with Jaylen Brown the night before. We know he's going to have big nights, hit big shots. But have you seen him activate more of that leadership role you wanted to see on the floor?
Yes, and look, Kawhi Leonard could be on this list. I mean, there are other guys who have played really well. Pascal Siakam, believe it or not, could be on this list based on the performance he's had so far in their series. Kyrie, to me, and the effectiveness of what he does off the dribble in the half court for Boston is something that's always there. You always know you have that threat. Where he's been really good at, to me, in this postseason, is playing that two-man game with Al Horford. That's something that they haven't been able to lean on all year that they will in this postseason.
All right, well, certainly Coach Bud knows a thing or two about Al Horford. A number of other guys are in the playoffs on different teams. His team now has that guy. I don't know if anyone's going to stand above him on the MVP ladder regular season, but can he close out the series tonight?